forward slash, so 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Okay, now let's take a little bit of time to discuss a mathematical operation that you may not have seen before. It's the modulo or mod operator, and basically what this does, it returns back the remainder after a division. For example, if we were to do 7 divided by 4, we get back 1.75. And if you were to do this, kind of using elementary school mathematics, you would say 7 divided by 4, 4 goes into 7 one time with a remainder of 3, because 4 plus 3 is 7. Let's imagine you actually just wanted to know that remainder, the actual number 3. In that case, you can use the mod operator, which is a percent sign. So we're going to say 7 mod 4, and it returns back 3. Because 7 divided by 4, it goes in one time evenly with a remainder of 3. So for example, we could do 50 mod 5, and if 5 goes into 50 evenly, then we get back a remainder of 0. Which is nice because it's a way to check if a number is evenly divisible by another number. That's a really convenient check when you want to check if a number is even or not. So let's imagine we have an odd number, 23, and we want to know if it's even or odd. Well, I could just look at it, but maybe sometime in my code, it's disguised as a variable, and I really need to quickly check if it's even or odd. One way I could do this is simply with a mod 2. And I know that if mod 2
पाइथन के नोट्स हैं, चलो नोट्स ही पढ़ते हैं। पाइथन के नोट्स क्या हैं? पाइथन ऑब्जेक्ट्स बताइए, मेथड्स एंड फंक्शंस पढ़ते हैं। चलो कोई भी चीज़ पढ़ लेनी चाहिए, ना पढ़ने से बहुत ज़रूरी है। अब कल क्या होगा अल्लाह नोज बेस्ट। जब तक ये इनिशियलाइज होगा तब तक हम ये देखते हैं। चलो क्या है ये मेथड्स एंड फंक्शंस। टाइम क्या हुआ 8:39 तक पढ़ेंगे। मेथड्स, we have already seen a few examples of methods when learning about object and data structures in Python. Methods are essentially functions built into objects. Later on in the course we will learn about how to create our own objects and methods using object-oriented programming and classes. ओ ब्राइटनेस बड़ा इकराम, उजाला ला, जिंदगी में अंधेरे की कमी है क्या? Methods perform specific actions and can also take argument just like a function. This lecture will serve as just a brief introduction to methods and get you thinking about the overall design methods that will touch back upon when we reach. हाँ मानना पड़ेगा, laziness तो आ गई, दही खाया था। Methods are in the form object dot shut up Ikram. Methods are in the form object dot method argument 1 argument 2 extra. You will later see we can think of methods as having an argument self referring to the object. You can't see this argument, but we will be using it later on in the course during the OOP lectures. Let's take a quick look at what an example of various methods a list has. आया क्या ये कोडिंग वाला? अभी तक इनिशियलाइज आ गया। चलो कोडिंग पे चलते हैं अब। लेट्स गो। बाप रे बाप।
2 results in something other than 0, then we have an odd number. Let's open up a Jupyter Notebook and get started. Alright, so before we actually start typing any code, I wanted to briefly mention that if you ever want to toggle this toolbar or this header on or off, you can just come here, click View, and then select Toggle 1. Going over later. If you want to do addition, it's just an addition sign or a plus sign to +1. If you want to do subtraction, that's just a dash or a minus sign to -1. You can use an asterisk for multiplication, so 2 times 2. And if you want to perform division, that's just a forward slash. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Okay, now let's take a little bit of time to discuss a mathematical operation that you may not have seen before. It's the modulo or mod operator. And basically what this does, it returns back the remainder after a division. For example, if we were to do 7 divided by 4, we get back 1.75. And if you were to do this, kind of using elementary school mathematics, you would say 7 divided by 4, 4 goes into 7 one time with a remainder of 3, because 4 plus 3 is 7. Let's imagine you actually just wanted to know that remainder, the actual number 3. In that case, you can use the mod operator, which is a percent sign. So we're going to say 7 mod 4, and it returns back 3. Because 7 divided by 4, it goes in one time evenly with a remainder of 3. So for example, we could do 50 mod 5, and if 5 goes into 50 evenly, then we get back a remainder of 0, which is nice because it's a way to check if a number is evenly divisible by another number. That's a really convenient check when you want to check if a number is even or not. So let's imagine we have an odd number, 23, and we want to know if it's even or odd. Well, I could just look at it, but maybe sometime in my code it's disguised as a variable, and I really need to quickly check if it's even or odd. One way I could do this is simply with a mod 2. And I know that if mod 2 results in something other than 0, then we have an odd number. Because if I have an even number, then when you divide it by 2, there should be no remainder, or the remainder should be 0. So that's the mod operator. Again, it just gives you back the remainder after you perform a division. Let's continue with everything else about arithmetic. You can also perform powers. So you can do something like 2 to the power of 3. So that's just 2 asterisk signs in a row. So 2 to the power of 3, that's 8. And then we can also perform order of operations. Let's imagine that I have the following equation. 2 plus 10 multiplied by 10 plus 3. If I run that code, I get back 105. But what if I wanted to actually have 2 plus 10 occur first, then multiply that by the result of 10 plus 3? Right now, we're following basic order of operations with math, which is going to perform this multiplication first before it does this addition. So it's performing 10 times 10, 100, plus 2, plus 3. So to have our operations happen first, the way we want them, we can use parentheses. I can say 2 plus 10 multiplied by, and in parentheses, 10 plus 3. And if I run that, I get back 156 the way I want it. Okay, so that's the basics of arithmetic and using Python as a calculator. Hopefully it was pretty straightforward. Coming up next, we're going to expand on this by showing you how you can perform variable assignments. That is to create your own variable name and then assign an object to it. We'll see you there at the next lecture.
एक्सरसाइज बाद में करेंगे, फिलहाल वीडियो देखने दे।
In our code. For example, I could say a variable name, everybody. Now we just saw how to work with numbers, but what do these numbers actually represent? We had integers and floating point numbers, but we don't actually have a variable name assigned to them. So it'd be nice if we can assign these particular data types a variable name to easily reference them later on in our code. For example, I could say a variable name my_dogs is equal to 2 because I have 2 dogs. Now there are a couple of rules for choosing a variable name in Python. And these rules are that names cannot start with a number. There can also be no spaces in the variable name, so you should use an underscore instead. And you also can't have any of these symbols in a name. And if you accidentally forget this list of symbols, if you were to type one of these symbols out in a variable name, Python would quickly complain and you'd have an error. So you don't need to worry about memorizing all these. You'd get the error as you're typing along. A few more rules about variable names. It's generally considered best practice, according to PEP 8, that names are lowercase. Now there are situations when you become a more advanced programmer where you're going to want to have kind of global variable names in all caps that are used throughout your code. But right now in general, there can also be no spaces in the variable name, so you should use an underscore instead. And you also can't have any of these symbols in a name. And if you accidentally forget this list of symbols, if you were to type one of these symbols out in a variable name, Python would quickly complain and you'd have an error. So you don't need to worry about memorizing all these. You'd get the error as you're typing along. PEP 8, that names are lowercase. Now there are situations when you become a more advanced programmer where you're going to want to have kind of global variable names in all caps that are used throughout your code. But right now,
Let's do something difficult. Indexing and slicing पढ़ते हैं यार. Reading is very important.
we get back C, E, G. So
Indexing
C,
कहाँ है यार?
then jump to E, then jump to G. So notice how this all works in combination. You have a start, a stop, and then a step size. Something that you may
Indexing
commonly
and
see
slicing
is
कहाँ पे
using
है?
a clever step size
Setting,
trick
indexing
to
and
reverse a
slicing.
string. And what you can do is say my
Error
string,
handling, miles.
and then say from all the way to the beginning,
Possible.
all the way to the end, take a step size of -1.
चलो भाई coding start.
Okay, so to start this all off, I'm going to create a variable called my string, and I'm going to set it equal to the string hello world. So notice there's a space in there between hello world. I run this, and let's check to make sure. Okay, so we have hello world there, ready to go. Now, let's imagine I wanted to grab a single character from this string. In that case, I want to use indexing. So what we do is we call the variable name, we have square brackets off of it, and let's imagine I want to grab the first character, that is capital H, then I pass in a 0, because indexing starts at 0, and that allows me to return that first character, H. Let's
What did I do, man? Like, I don't know what's wrong with Achha capital. यार, oh, these kind of things happen, don't worry. मेहनत जाती रहेगा ना. हाँ, हो गया, ठीक है. चलो, मैंने कौन सा नशा किया था? What the hell, man? क्या बात है, मतलब इतना ज़्यादा बोल जाता है ये बंदा. Something wrong. Restart कर्नल कहाँ गया? कर्नल को निकालो. Restart कर्नल कर दो. My string is equal to hello world. फिर अगले में लिख दो my string. ये क्यों नहीं हो रहा यार? ऐसा क्या हो गया? क्या हो गया इसको?
First character, that is capital H, then I pass in a 0, because indexing starts at 0, and that allows me to return that first character, H. Let's try to grab another character. Let's say we want to grab R, so let's count this out. My string, and we want to count from 0, so that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so notice the space counts, 6, 7, 8. So if I pass an 8 there, it should return R. Perfect. So again, this is known as indexing. Now let's imagine we wanted to grab this letter L. Well, there's two ways I could actually do this. I could say my string at 9, because that's right after that R. The other way I could do it is using the reverse indexing we previously mentioned. So starting at 0 from H, I can go backwards in the string, so that D is -1, and that means this L is -2. So if I say my string, -2, I will actually get back that L. And then if I keep going backwards in the string, I'll get back that R, which is right before the L. So I will get back this R right there. So you can use both positive index positions and negative index positions to grab elements or characters from the string. And that's really useful, again, because oftentimes you'll have a variable string, maybe it's someone's name, and you don't know how big that name is, but for whatever reason you want to grab the last letter of their name, then you can always just use -1, and you know that's the last letter of the string. Okay, let's go ahead and continue to discuss slicing. So slicing is a little more complicated because we're grabbing a subsection of the string. So that's more than one character typically. Let's review our string. Oops, my string here is hello world, and I'm going to redefine my string, just so this is a little easier to follow, as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. So just kind of a string of the alphabet there. We'll redefine it, and now I have this string of the alphabet. So let's imagine that we wanted to grab a subsection of a string that started at a particular index and then went all the way to the end. Well, the way we could do that is we would say my string, square bracket notation, and then we would say the starting index, let's imagine we want to start at the letter C and then go all the way to the end. So C is at index 2 because it's 0, 1, 2. So what I do is I pass in 2, and if I just do that, it gives me back the letter C. But if I want from C all the way to the end, I can say colon, and that indicates starting at index 2, colon, go all the way to the end, and there we have CD all the way to K. Okay, now let's imagine kind of an opposite situation where I want to grab everything up to a particular index. Then I could say my string, colon, and let's say I wanted to grab A, B, and C. So starting at the very beginning, go ahead and grab all the way up to essentially letter D here. So we'll say 0, 1, 2, 3, pass in 3 there, and then we run this, and we get back A, B, C. Now this is sometimes confusing for students, because if we check out my string, technically we have the D at index position 3 because it's 0, 1, 2, 3. What you should note here is that the stop index, this term right here for 3, which only returns back ABC, that stop index is basically saying go up to, but not including that index position. So go up to the letter D, but don't include it, which essentially says ABC. So keep that in mind as you're kind of playing around with slice notation. This stop is up to, but not including. Okay, let's combine these two ideas of a starting index and a stop index by trying to grab a subsection of string that's in the middle. For example, let's try to grab DEF from the middle of the string. The way we can do that is we say my string, open square brackets, and then we start off with our starting index position. In this case, it's at letter D, so that's 0, 1, 2, 3. Then we say colon, and then it's going to go up to the index position of G here, because I just want DEF, so we're going to go up to, but not including G. So that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now if I run this, I get back DEF. So let's practice this one more time by trying to grab another subsection of the string. For example, let's try to grab just B and C, these two letters, BC. So the way we can do that is we'll type out my string, open and close square brackets. Our starting index position is at 0, 1 for B, colon, and then it looks like we want to go up to, but not including D, so that's 0, 1, 2, 3. We'll run this, and there we have BC. And I would encourage you to try to grab a subsection. So choose the subsection of the string and then see if you can grab it. You can go ahead and pause the video and try that out. Okay, to end our discussion, let's quickly discuss step size. Let's imagine that I wanted to grab everything from the beginning of the string all the way to the end. Well, technically, that's just the string itself, but I could also use colon notation for this. I could say colon colon, and that basically says from all the way to the beginning, go all the way to the end. Now, you don't often see this because you might as well just call the string itself, but this is technically valid syntax. The reason you might see something like this is if someone wanted to specify the third parameter, and that is the step size. So right now, we're saying go all the way from the beginning to the end in a step size of 1, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So that's the default step size of 1. However, I can change that by providing a number such as 2, and that says go in jumps of 2. So from A, go to C, to E, to G, to I, to K. So if I run this, I get back A, C, E, G, I, K, because I'm jumping in a step size of 2. And we can increase this to be a step size of 3, and then we'll get from A, jump to D, jump to G, jump to J, and then there's no more letters to jump to because we're jumping in a larger step size. So that's how step size works, and you can combine this with a start and stop as well. So we could say something like starting from index 2, go up to but not including index 7 and a step size of 2, and we get back C, E, G. So C, then jump to E, then jump to G. So notice how this all works in combination. You have a start, a stop, and then a step size. Something that you may commonly see is using a clever step size trick to reverse a string. And what you can do is say my string, and then say from all the way to the beginning, all the way to the end, take a step size of -1. And what that does is it actually reverses your string, because you're saying from all the way to the beginning to all the way to the end, go and take a backward step, which is then K, J, I, all the way to the end. So this is kind of a little Python trick. Often in interviews, people ask you to reverse a string, and they kind of get annoyed by Pythonistas because they quickly just do this nice kind of slick one-liner instead of doing a for loop. But I just want you to be aware of that. Typically in our code, we won't really be using this too much because it's more of a trick. But again, a very useful one at that. Okay, so that's it for slicing and indexing. Coming up next, we're going to discuss a little bit about some useful string properties. We'll see you there.
क्या मम्मा यार, आपको भी छोड़ो यार, कंप्लेन नहीं कर सकते। रूटीन चेक करे यार, मैंने पाइथन तो नहीं बिठा दिया, इंग्लिश में आना है यार। बाप रे बाप। चलो पढ़ो तब तक थ्योरी। माइलस्टोन प्रोजेक्ट क्या है? 12 मिनट बचे हैं। वार्म अप प्रोजेक्ट एक्सरसाइजेस। खाते खाते क्या खाएं, इतना खाएंगे फिर जिंदगी का क्या, खाना ही रह जाएगा जिंदगी में। और भी बहुत चीजें। मम्मा प्लीज बाकी आप खाओ यार, मेरे को फिर फोकस ही चला जाता है। हाँ रखो अबू के, प्लीज आप ही रखो ना यार, रखो अबू के लिए। नहीं और दे दो, बोलो खाओ, इतना पैसा खर्चाते क्यों फिर। खाओ, आप ही किस्मत खाएंगे मामा। देखो कितने प्यार से देख रहे हो आप, जैसे आप वो खाओ। मामा मेरे को फिर अजाब होता है यार।
माँ के हाथ से
ये
प्लीज,
माँ के हाथ
अपनी
से
मामा
मत
की
बोलो।
कसम है, अपने माँ की मरे की कसम प्लीज, अब मेरी खुशी के लिए। तू तो खुद बोलता माँ बाप का कितना होता है, माँ बाप का
नाम रखो वही,
अच्छा
रखो।
अच्छा बस
बस, अब मैं
अच्छा
मामा पाँव पड़ता हूँ प्लीज।
अच्छा बढ़िया।
हाँ
तेरे को क्यों नहीं पसंद?
ओ मम्मा, ज्यादा जरूरत से ज्यादा नहीं खा सकता मैं, मेरे को बॉडी में कुछ कम ही लगती है फिर।
ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता बाबू।
काश आपने सीखा होता, मैं क्या करूं। आपने बहुत सीखा, अब और सीखने नहीं, अब क्रिकेटर बनने नहीं
अब
चले
ये
जाना
करना
आप।
ही नहीं, अब जिगर मेरा हाँ ऐसे खुशी देख कितना खूबसूरत लगता है।
हाँ।
अब देखना वो जॉब निकला कहीं अप्लाई स्टार्ट है
अच्छा अच्छा, बोला ना मम्मा।
हाँ कहा गया
मेरे को
एक
मैं
नहीं वाला
करूँ,
मम्मा का,
पाँच
एक
मिनट
नहीं
हो
वाला
गए।
अबू का
यार मम्मा।
अबू का अबू का अबू का वो मुझसे नौकरियां हो स्टार्ट अप्लाइंग। अब लिखेगा ग्रेजुएशन डे ER इकरामुल हक।
मैं पागल नहीं होगा ये सब करके, इतना छोटा नहीं सोचता मैं।
इससे बड़ी खुशी मुझे
नहीं मम्मा, आपको कभी खुशी ही नहीं होती, ये तो दुख है।
और लोगों का दिल रखना उसी की है।
मेरे को नहीं रखना, ये झूठ मत बोला करो प्लीज, नमाज जब प्लीज सच बोलना चाहिए।
मेरा बोलो मैं तुम्हारा बोलूं।
चलो बहुत ज्यादा हो गया आपका। फेंक रही हो आज, ऐसे बड़ी बड़ी बातें फेंक रही हो जैसे ना वो यूडीमी बैठ गया यार। बारह मिनट बचे हैं। यार कुछ भी है यार, ह्यूमर ही खत्म हो गया लाइफ। चलो अब 12 मिनट है, तब तक रीडिंग करते हैं। लेट्स रीड फॉर 12 मिनट्स।